I was her footrest for hours and begged for more. Welcome to Goddess Foot Confessions. Let's uncover what really happened. The evening air was cool against my skin as I stepped up to her door, my heart beating in a nervous rhythm I barely recognized anymore. The city had softened around me, distant sounds fading into a quiet hush, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting. I wasn't sure what I expected, only that this moment felt important, fragile. She opened the door before I could knock, standing there framed by soft, warm light spilling from inside. Her smile was calm, confident, like she knew secrets I had yet to uncover. Barefoot, she didn't hesitate to invite me in, as though my presence was as natural as the gentle sway of the curtains behind her. The apartment smelled faintly of lavender and old books, a comforting scent that eased some of the tension coiled tight inside me. I followed her lead silently, my eyes drawn to the way her bare feet moved across the floor, toes flexing, heels gliding, effortless grace that unsettled me in the best possible way. She gestured toward the couch, settling herself with casual ease, crossing one ankle over the other. I hesitated before sitting down, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt, like every inch of me was under a delicate spotlight. Her feet rested near my knees, and I caught myself stealing a glance, captivated by the smooth curve of her arches, the gentle way her toes curled as if feeling the softness beneath them. The silence stretched between us, thick but not uncomfortable. Somewhere beyond words, an unspoken promise hovered, that this evening was a beginning, an unfolding. I took a breath, willing myself to relax, to let the warmth in. Little did I know then how deeply that simple moment, her bare feet near me, would change everything. She shifted slightly on the couch, the soft fabric molding to her shape as her bare feet came fully into view. The gentle light caught the subtle sheen on her skin, highlighting the delicate arches and the way her toes flexed, curling and uncurling with a rhythm that seemed to echo the quiet pulse in my chest. I found myself unable to look away, though I tried to seem casual. The contrast of her smooth heels against the worn wood floor was mesmerizing, a silent invitation that stirred something inside me I hadn't acknowledged before. The space between us felt charged, like the air before a summer storm, heavy with anticipation. Her eyes caught mine and held them with a steady, knowing gaze. There was an unspoken understanding there, a quiet teasing that made my throat dry. She smiled softly, her lips curving in a way that promised both comfort and something more elusive, more intoxicating. "You look tense," she said, her voice low and warm, like the touch of a velvet glove. "You can relax here. This is a safe place." I nodded, swallowing hard, trying to match her calm. Her toes shifted again, tracing lazy circles against the hardwood, and I felt a ripple pass through me, subtle but undeniable. For a moment, I wondered if she noticed the way my eyes lingered, how the simple sight of her bare feet unsettled and fascinated me all at once. But she said nothing, just let the silence grow, the space between us alive with quiet possibility. That night, I learned that sometimes it's not what's said that changes everything. It's the unspoken moments, the gentle touches, the shared silences that say so much more. And all the while, her feet rested near me, a tender, delicate tether binding me to the moment. The room seemed to breathe with quiet comfort as she patted the spot beside her on the couch. "Sit," she said simply, her bare foot shifting, the soft pads brushing the woven fabric of the couch between us. I hesitated for a moment, my breath catching as I settled beside her, acutely aware of how close our legs now were. Her foot came to rest near my knee, toes relaxed and almost playful in their gentle curl. The subtle warmth radiating from her skin was a balm against the cool air, and I felt an unexpected surge of calm seep into my tense muscles. It was a strange, tender feeling, both grounding and exhilarating, like being tethered to something solid yet soft. Soft jazz murmured from a corner speaker, blending seamlessly with the muted city, sounds drifting through the slightly cracked window. The gentle sway of her foot matched the rhythm, each flex of her toes sending a silent signal I wasn't quite ready to decode. Our eyes met briefly, and I caught the faintest flicker of amusement in her gaze, as if she understood the storm swirling quietly inside me. I looked away, suddenly shy, but couldn't stop the quickening beat in my chest. The silence settled comfortably again, a cushion between us. Her foot inched closer, the curve of her arch brushing my thigh. It was accidental, I told myself, but the electricity that sparked in that brief contact whispered otherwise. In that moment, I realized that this couch, this room, this quiet evening, all of it was shifting, and so was I. The soft glow of the table lamp cast gentle shadows that danced across the walls, wrapping the room in a golden warmth. The faint scent of jasmine lingered, mingling with the subtle hum of the music that filled the space like a tender caress. I could feel the heat rising in my chest as I tried to steady my breathing. She stretched lazily, slipping one foot out from beneath the soft blanket draped over her legs. The bare skin of her heel glowed in the low light, and I found myself mesmerized by the way it lightly skimmed the wooden floor, delicate, deliberate. Her toes curled slightly, then flexed, the small movements hypnotic. I couldn't help but watch, the steady rhythm of her feet echoing a silent invitation. My own legs felt suddenly heavy, grounded in a way I hadn't expected. The warmth wasn't just from the lamp or the room. It was something between us, something electric and unseen. When her foot brushed against the edge of mine, light as a whisper, my breath hitched. The contact was fleeting, but it sent ripples through my skin, a secret message encoded in the softness of her touch. She smiled at me then, a knowing smile that seemed to say she was aware of the quiet storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. Her confidence was magnetic. I was drawn to it, to her bare feet, to the slow pulse of the moment, like a moth to a flame that promised both comfort and a spark. That night, I realized that warmth could be found in the simplest things, a touch, a glance, the slow flex of a toe in the quiet dark. And sometimes, that warmth was all you needed to start surrendering. She shifted on the couch, stretching her legs out with a casual grace that seemed effortless. One shoe slipped off, revealing her bare foot resting lightly on the plush rug below. The arch curved smoothly, and her toes spread just enough to show a relaxed ease. The soft lighting made her skin glow, highlighting the subtle contours I'd never truly noticed before. I caught myself staring, breath shallow, as my eyes traced the gentle rise and fall of her foot with each tiny movement. There was something hypnotic about the way her toes flexed, a slow, deliberate dance that stirred a quiet longing inside me. Her foot shifted closer, brushing against my calf, a touch so light it might have been accidental, but I felt the heat surge in response. The silence between us thickened, charged with something unspoken and fragile. She caught my gaze, her eyes sparkling with a mix of amusement and something deeper, a knowingness that set my nerves aflame. Without breaking eye contact, she tucked her foot beneath her other leg, the soft skin disappearing beneath the folds of her pants, leaving a trace of warmth lingering on my skin. That simple stretch, so natural and unguarded, opened a new door in the quiet room. It was a subtle invitation, one I wasn't sure I was ready to accept, yet the pull was undeniable. As the minutes slipped by, I felt the invisible thread between us tighten, woven with every bare foot that moved closer, every glance that lingered too long, every breath that caught when her skin brushed mine. Her foot brushed my leg again, this time a little more deliberately, the soft pads pressing gently against my calf. The contact sent a surprising warmth crawling up my skin, leaving a delicate trail in its wake. My breath caught, shallow and uneven, as if the simple touch had unlocked a hidden chord within me. I tried to steady myself, but the silence between us grew heavier, thick with the weight of everything left unsaid. Her toes flexed slowly, each subtle movement a whisper against my jeans, a quiet rhythm that I found impossible to ignore. It wasn't just a touch. It was a message, an unspoken invitation wrapped in softness. She glanced at me, her eyes calm but sparkling with something teasing, almost mischievous. The way her foot lingered, the ease with which she let it rest against me, it unsettled me in the most intoxicating way. Was this intentional? A game? Or simply the language of two souls slowly finding their rhythm? My heart pounded louder, echoing in the space between us, and I felt myself leaning in without meaning to, drawn by the gravity of her presence and the tenderness of her touch. Time seemed to slow, every second stretching, allowing me to savor the fragile closeness. In that moment, her foot was no longer just a foot. It was a lifeline, a tether, a secret kept between us. And I wanted more. The evening deepened as we settled into a rhythm of soft conversation, our voices low and steady like a gentle current beneath the quiet room. She spoke of her days, simple moments filled with laughter and quiet victories, while I listened, drawn not only to her words but to the subtle movements of her feet. She tucked them beneath her, toes brushing the carpet as if finding a secret comfort in the softness. I watched the way her heels pressed gently against the floor, each shift a silent punctuation to her stories. There was an ease in her bare feet that spoke of confidence, a quiet command of the space we shared. As I opened up about my own struggles, the warmth of her presence wrapped around me, soothing the edges of old wounds I hadn't known how to voice. Her foot brushed lightly against my ankle, a tentative touch that spoke volumes more than any words could. It was a grounding connection, a quiet reassurance that I wasn't alone. Our stories mingled in the soft glow, weaving threads of understanding between us. The subtle intimacy of her bare feet near me, sometimes still, sometimes moving with delicate grace, became a language all its own, telling tales of trust and tentative desire. In that shared space, something fragile and precious took root, a bond built on whispered stories and the gentle brush of skin, growing deeper with every breath and every tender glance. The room felt warmer, as if the soft light and our quiet conversation had melted away the walls I'd built around myself. I was surprised when she looked at me with that calm, knowing smile and said, "You look like your feet could use some attention." Her voice was gentle, almost teasing, but underneath it was a kindness that invited trust. I hesitated, unsure if I deserved such care, but the tired ache in my muscles won over. Slowly, I nodded, and she patted the space beside her on the couch again, this time beckoning me closer, not just as a guest, but as someone she wanted to hold gently in her presence. As I settled in, she lifted one foot and cradled it in her hands with a tenderness that took me by surprise. The warmth of her palms seeped through the fabric of my socks, and I felt myself relax a little more. Her fingers moved carefully, gliding over the arches and along the soles, each touch deliberate and soothing. The subtle pressure she applied sent waves of comfort through my body, easing the tension I hadn't fully acknowledged until now. I glanced up, meeting her eyes, and found no judgment there, only acceptance and a quiet encouragement to let go. My heart slowed as I let myself sink deeper into the moment, the mundane worries fading into the background. Her toes flexed unconsciously as she worked, the smooth skin of her feet brushing against my hands and wrists. I couldn't help but notice the gentle strength in her movements, the way she seemed completely at ease, confident in herself and in the space we shared. The silence between us grew thicker, a soft cocoon of trust and vulnerability. That simple act of care, her hands on my feet, her bare skin so near, was more than physical relief. It was a bridge between us, a slow-building intimacy that spoke of something deeper than words. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, wanted, and safe. And as her fingers traced the curves of my tired feet, something stirred inside me, quiet, profound, and entirely unexpected. Her hands moved with quiet confidence as they glided over my feet, fingers tracing each line and contour with a tenderness that made my skin tingle. The warmth from her touch seeped deep into my muscles, releasing knots of tension I hadn't realized were there. I closed my eyes briefly, savoring the sensation, feeling a slow calm wash over me. As she worked, her bare toes flexed reflexively, curling and stretching in a rhythmic dance that caught my attention. The subtle movements were mesmerizing, the way the soft skin of her feet responded naturally to the motion of her hands, delicate yet purposeful. I couldn't help but watch, captivated by the gentle arch of her foot, the way the light caught the smooth curve of her heel. Every now and then, her toes brushed lightly against my wrist or forearm, an accidental, or perhaps intentional, caress that sent a shiver running down my spine. The silence between us was filled with an electric tension, a quiet understanding that this moment was more than just a massage. It was an exchange of trust, vulnerability, and something unspoken but deeply felt. I tried to steady my breath as my gaze met hers. Her eyes held a soft warmth, inviting yet unreadable, as if she understood the complex feelings swirling inside me without needing words. The room seemed to shrink around us, the outside world falling away until there was only the two of us, connected through touch, sight, and the quiet language of skin on skin. Her fingers moved slowly over the sensitive arches of my feet, and I felt a profound mix of comfort and yearning stir within me. I was caught between wanting to pull away and the deep desire to lean into the closeness she offered. It was a delicate balance, a dance of emotions played out through the gentle motion of fingertips and the graceful flex of toes. In that moment, I realized this was more than care. It was connection. The room had settled into a quiet rhythm, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the worn carpet. As her fingers moved with gentle precision over my feet, our eyes met and held. There was a lingering in her gaze that felt like an invitation and a challenge all at once, a silent conversation that spoke volumes beyond words. I found myself caught in that gaze, the world narrowing until nothing existed but the space between us. Her eyes, deep and steady, seemed to peer into parts of me I rarely showed, places tangled with vulnerability, desire, and hope. The warmth in them was comforting, yet there was an edge of something thrilling, a promise of discovery yet to come. Her foot, bare and delicate, shifted lightly against my leg, sending a subtle spark through my skin. It was as if every glance, every touch, was carefully orchestrated to draw me closer, to unravel the walls I had built so carefully over time. The silence grew thick, charged with unspoken feelings that neither of us dared to name. I swallowed hard, the intensity of the moment making my heart race. It was no longer just a massage, no longer just a quiet evening. Something deeper was unfolding, a connection that reached beyond touch, beyond sight. The weight of her gaze held me, grounding me, and yet it pulled me into a place of exquisite vulnerability. For a brief moment, time seemed to pause. The outside world faded into the background as our eyes locked in that delicate dance, a quiet promise hanging between us, one of trust, of closeness, and the slow unfolding of something more. And beneath it all, I knew this was only the beginning. The soft cushions beneath me seemed to disappear as I lowered myself to the floor beside the couch, drawn by an invisible pull I couldn't resist. Her bare foot rested lightly on my thigh, warm and weightless, a delicate presence that anchored me in the moment. The faint scent of her skin mingled with the quiet hum of the room, wrapping around me like a comforting cloak. I hesitated, my fingers twitching as if wanting to reach out, but unsure where to place themselves. Her foot shifted slightly, the gentle curve of her arch pressing against my leg, soft and inviting. The contrast between her smooth skin and the rough fabric of my jeans was stark, heightening my awareness of every subtle sensation. Our eyes met again, steady, calm, and full of unspoken meaning. There was no rush, no urgency, only a slow, steady unfolding of trust and connection. I felt the tension inside me unravel just a little, replaced by a warm certainty that this fragile closeness was exactly where I was meant to be. Her toes flexed lazily, and I caught myself holding my breath, the smallest movement stirring a quiet yearning deep inside. The silence stretched comfortably between us, each second laden with meaning beyond our words. In that simple act, her foot resting on my thigh, my presence so close, I found a new kind of intimacy. It was gentle, unassuming, and yet it carried the weight of something profound. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, understood, and quietly cherished. And as I knelt there beside her, connected by the soft touch of bare skin, I knew that the journey we'd begun was just unfolding. Her bare foot settled more firmly on my lap, the soft skin warm against the fabric of my jeans. I felt the subtle weight of her presence, an unspoken comfort that seemed to tether me to the here and now. The quiet room held its breath as I became, quite literally, her footrest, something both grounding and strange all at once. Her toes traced slow, languid circles on my thigh, flexing with a rhythm that felt almost hypnotic. I couldn't stop the flutter in my chest, the way my breath hitched every time her skin brushed against mine, each contact a delicate spark igniting something tender and forbidden beneath the surface. The silence between us grew thick, woven with unspoken words and lingering glances. I was acutely aware of every shift, every tiny movement, the curve of her arch, the way her heel pressed lightly, the gentle pulse of her toes curling and uncurling in slow cadence. It was as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the intensity of the moment. I wanted to speak, to ask if this closeness was as new to her as it was to me. But the words stuck, caught in the delicate web we were weaving without sound. Instead, I simply stayed still, letting myself be held by the quiet intimacy, the soft weight of her bare foot anchoring me. Something deep within me stirred, a yearning that wasn't quite fear nor purely desire. It was a quiet need to belong, to be trusted, to be close in a way I'd never experienced before. And in that moment, as her foot rested on my lap, I understood that this was no ordinary connection. It was the beginning of something profound. Her toes flexed gently, curling and stretching with a rhythm that seemed to echo the quickening beat of my heart. I felt my breath hitch involuntarily, caught somewhere between awe and a trembling anticipation I wasn't ready to name. The softness of her skin against my thigh was a whisper, intimate, fragile, and it pulled at something buried deep inside me. The room around us faded to a muted backdrop, every sound and movement dissolving into the quiet space we shared. Her foot shifted again, a tender brush that lingered longer than before, and I couldn't help but lean into the sensation, wanting to hold on to the warmth and the silence. Our eyes met, and in that look I saw the faintest spark, a flicker of understanding that something unspoken was weaving its way between us. The silence thickened, filled with a tension both sweet and urgent, the kind that builds slowly until it feels like it might shatter. I swallowed hard, trying to steady the rapid beat of my chest as my mind spun with the possibilities that hung in the air like a delicate promise. Her foot, so close and alive, was no longer just a part of her. It was a symbol of the connection we were forging, fragile yet unbreakable. The quiet between us grew heavier, charged with a desire neither of us dared voice. And yet, it was there, in every gentle flex, every lingering touch, every breath caught in the space between our bodies. In that moment, I realized how deeply I was falling, not just for her, but for the quiet intimacy her presence awakened within me. The stillness hung between us like a fragile thread, delicate and taut. I hesitated, the weight of unspoken words pressing gently on my chest. Finally, I found the courage to break the silence, my voice barely above a whisper. I've always been drawn to this. I gestured vaguely toward her feet, the subtle curve of her arch, the way her toes flexed so naturally. It's hard to explain. She watched me carefully, her eyes soft and understanding, inviting me to continue without judgment. There was no rush, only a patient warmth that made it easier to share what I'd kept hidden for so long. My fingers twitched nervously, but her presence steadied me. It's like when your foot brushes mine, or when I watch the way your toes move, something stirs inside me. It's more than just attraction. It's comfort, fascination, and maybe something more. I confessed, my words trailing off uncertainly. Her lips curved into a gentle smile, and she reached out to lightly rest her bare foot against my hand. A simple touch that spoke volumes. "Thank you for trusting me," she said softly. "You don't have to hide this part of yourself here." The vulnerability in that moment was profound. I felt a warmth spreading through me, not just from her touch, but from the acceptance that had finally settled between us. The silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was filled with a quiet connection, a shared understanding that deepened the intimacy we'd been building. Her toes flexed slowly against my skin, and I knew that whatever this was, it was no longer something I had to face alone. Together, we were stepping into a new kind of closeness, one built on trust, softness, and the gentle dance of fingertips and toes. She shifted on the couch with a graceful ease that drew my eyes again. Slowly, deliberately, she slipped off the other shoe, revealing both feet bare and free. The soft skin glowed faintly in the dim light, the arches smooth and inviting, toes relaxed yet purposeful in their subtle movements. My breath caught at the sight, the gentle rise and fall of her feet as they rested lightly on the floor, the delicate play of shadows tracing the curves of her heels. I found myself captivated, unable to look away from the quiet elegance that seemed to radiate from every inch of her skin. She stretched one foot out toward me, the heel barely touching my calf before pulling back just enough to keep me guessing. The air between us pulsed with an unspoken tension, each movement a silent conversation I was eager to understand. The warmth of the room seemed to deepen, enfolding us in a cocoon where time slowed and every sensation became magnified. Her bare feet were no longer just part of her. They were an extension of the connection growing between us, delicate yet undeniable. As she crossed her ankles, the soft skin of one foot brushed against my jeans, and I felt a flutter ripple through me, sharp and tender all at once. The subtle touch lingered, a silent invitation that promised more than comfort. It promised discovery. I wanted to reach out, to hold her foot gently, to explore this new closeness, but I stayed still, savoring the slow burn of anticipation. The night was ours to shape, and every bare footstep she took was a step deeper into something raw and beautiful. The soft glow of the lamp cast long shadows, and in that light, her bare feet seemed almost alive, moving with a delicate grace that held me captive. Slowly, one foot slid along my leg, a gentle, teasing caress that sent a ripple of warmth through my body. Her toes flexed in quiet rhythm, curling and stretching as if playing a silent melody only I could hear. I felt my pulse quicken, caught between the calmness of the moment and the electric tension that hummed just beneath the surface. The brush of her skin against mine was a language of its own, soft and unhurried, speaking of trust and a connection that defied easy words. She shifted slightly, letting her heel rest lightly on my thigh, the pressure tender but commanding. I swallowed hard, aware of every inch of her touch, the smoothness of her soles, the curve of her arches, the delicate dance of her toes. Each subtle movement was a thread weaving us closer together, binding us in this fragile intimacy. Her eyes found mine, holding a silent promise that stirred something deep within me. The room seemed to shrink until it was just the two of us, linked by the gentle, hypnotic motion of bare feet on bare skin. The rest of the world melted away, leaving only this moment suspended in time. I longed to close the distance, to let my hands explore the soft contours beneath my fingertips, but I stayed still, savoring the slow build, the patient unfolding of desire hidden beneath whispered touches. Her feet continued their delicate dance along my legs, a tender reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest weight, and that connection often grows in the quietest moments. Later, the room dimmed to a soft, flickering candlelight that danced across her bare skin and cast warm, golden hues on the walls. The firelight mingled with the steady rhythm of our breathing, weaving an intimate tapestry around us. She invited me to lie down beside her, and I felt the gentle pull of something familiar and new all at once. Her feet found their place softly on my chest, the delicate arches pressing just enough to steady me without weight. The sensation was both grounding and thrilling, a quiet intimacy that deepened the stillness between us. I couldn't stop watching the subtle movements of her toes, how they flexed and curled with an unspoken rhythm, like a secret language meant only for me. Our eyes met in the candlelight, shadows flickering as the flames swayed. There was no need for words. The quiet connection was enough. Her foot traced slow, soothing circles against my skin, each motion a tender caress that sent shivers through me. The warmth of her presence and the softness of her touch opened a space inside me I hadn't known existed. In that moment, everything else, the world outside, the past fears, fell away. There was only us suspended in time, connected through breath, touch, and the delicate dance of bare feet and whispered glances. The candlelight wrapped us in a gentle embrace, and I knew that whatever this was, it was real and profound. A bond forged in silence, carried by subtle touches and quiet moments that spoke louder than any words ever could. The flickering candlelight softened her features as she looked at me, eyes shimmering with a quiet intensity that made my heart race. Her bare foot still rested gently on my chest, the slow, soothing circles of her toes tracing an unspoken rhythm against my skin. The room held its breath, wrapped in the warmth of the moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, "Do you want more?" The question hung in the air, fragile yet profound, stirring a nervous excitement deep within me. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of possibility pressing gently on my chest. The vulnerability in her gaze invited honesty, and I nodded slowly, voice catching yes. Her smile was soft, a mix of reassurance and anticipation. Without haste, she shifted slightly, her foot sliding lower, the tender touch awakening every nerve ending. The silence between us thickened, charged with the promise of a connection that was unfolding, slowly, deliberately, and with a tenderness that took my breath away. I felt my own hand reach out instinctively, hesitating before resting lightly on the curve of her ankle, the smooth skin cool beneath my fingertips. The electric spark of contact was a quiet confession, a shared secret in the dim light. Her toes flexed gently, responding to my touch, and I realized how much I craved this closeness. The subtle dance of skin on skin, the slow awakening of a bond that went beyond words. In that whispered moment, everything shifted. The fear and hesitation melted into a tender longing, and I surrendered to the quiet intensity of the night. Her foot moved slowly, tracing soft, soothing circles over the skin of my chest. Each motion was deliberate, measured, a tender caress that seemed to speak in a language older than words. The warmth of her skin against mine sent gentle waves through me, awakening a quiet fire that simmered just beneath the surface. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation wash over me, the subtle flex of her toes like a delicate melody playing against my heartbeat. The silence between us was thick and full, filled with the unspoken promise of something deeper, something waiting patiently to be discovered. Her gaze never left mine, steady and full of quiet understanding. There was no rush here, only the slow unfolding of a connection that was both fragile and fierce. The way her foot moved against my chest, so intimate yet restrained, held me captive in the best possible way. I reached up tentatively, my fingers brushing along the curve of her ankle, careful not to disturb the fragile balance of the moment. She responded with a soft sigh, her toes curling slightly, as if inviting me closer. The tender exchange deepened, a dance of trust and desire played out in the gentlest of touches. Every nerve in my body hummed with awareness, the soft light casting shadows that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of our breaths. This was more than a simple touch. It was a language of closeness, a promise woven between skin and soul. And as her foot continued its slow, tender caress, I felt myself falling deeper into the quiet intimacy we shared, into a place where words were unnecessary, and every touch spoke volumes. The slow, tender rhythm of her foot tracing over my skin blurred the edges of everything I thought I knew about closeness and desire. Each gentle movement erased the sharp lines I had drawn between comfort and longing, safety and something far more intoxicating. The silence between us grew heavy, charged with an energy that neither of us named, but both felt deeply. Her toes brushed against my arm, light as a whisper, and I felt a shiver ripple through me. The warmth of her skin against mine was grounding yet electrifying, a paradox that made my heart race and steady at once. I realized that the boundaries I once relied on were melting away, replaced by a delicate tension woven from trust, curiosity, and something profoundly vulnerable. Our eyes met in the dim light, and I saw the same mix of wonder and uncertainty reflected back at me. There was no judgment, only a shared acceptance of the uncharted territory we had entered. The space between us felt smaller now, filled with the quiet promise of exploration and a bond that defied easy definition. I wanted to reach out, to close the gap that still held us apart, but I held back, savoring the slow dance of closeness and restraint. Her foot moved again, this time pressing a little firmer, grounding me in the moment and reminding me that we were connected, not just by touch, but by the delicate threads of shared vulnerability. As the night deepened around us, I understood that what we were experiencing was fragile and beautiful, a quiet unraveling of fears and the beginning of something far greater than either of us could have imagined. The room seemed to hold its breath as we settled into a quiet stillness, the kind that speaks louder than any words ever could. Her bare foot rested softly against my leg, the warmth and gentle pressure a silent testament to the connection growing between us. In that moment, language felt unnecessary. The silence was its own kind of conversation. Our eyes met briefly, and in that glance, I sensed an unspoken understanding, a delicate acknowledgement of the feelings blossoming in the spaces between us. There was no need to name what we were, no need to define the shift in energy that had quietly taken hold. It was enough to simply be present, to share the gentle rhythm of breath and touch. Her toes curled slowly, flexing in a languid motion that sent a shiver of awareness through me. The softness of her skin against mine was a constant, grounding presence amidst the swirling emotions. I felt a deep sense of peace, as though the world had momentarily paused to give space to this fragile intimacy. As I reached out, my fingers brushed against her ankle with reverence, careful not to disturb the fragile balance between us. She responded with a slight shift, a subtle invitation to stay close, to lean into the quiet comfort we had found together. In that silent understanding, I realized how rare and precious this was, a connection not just of bodies but of hearts and minds. It was a moment suspended in time, delicate and profound, and I held it close, knowing it was the beginning of something truly meaningful. The quiet of the night wrapped around us like a soft blanket as she curled up beside me on the couch. Her bare feet found their place against mine, toes intertwining in a delicate, wordless conversation. The warmth of her skin pressed close, a tender reassurance that sent waves of calm through my restless heart. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across her face, highlighting the softness in her expression, a mixture of trust, vulnerability, and something deeper I struggled to name. As we lay together, the world outside faded into insignificance, leaving only the steady rhythm of our breaths and the gentle press of skin against skin. Her foot brushed lightly over my calf, a slow, teasing touch that sparked a flutter deep within me. I reached out instinctively, my fingers tracing the contours of her ankle, anchoring me to the reality of the moment. The connection between us was palpable, an unspoken promise forged in silence and gentle touches. I felt her shift slightly, resting her head against my shoulder, the weight of her presence both comforting and electrifying. There was no need for words. Our closeness spoke volumes. In that embrace, I found a sanctuary, a place where fears melted away, replaced by a quiet certainty that we were exactly where we were meant to be. The night stretched on, wrapped in warmth and softness, and I knew that this embrace was more than physical. It was the beginning of a journey, a slow, beautiful unfolding of trust, desire, and profound connection that neither of us could yet fully understand. The first light of dawn slipped quietly through the curtains, painting the room in gentle shades of gold and rose. The warmth of morning wrapped around us like a promise, soft and tender after the intimacy of the night. She still lay beside me, her bare feet resting lightly against my leg, the delicate curves catching the early light in a way that made my breath catch. The room was peaceful, filled with the quiet rhythm of slow breaths and the gentle rise and fall of our chests. In that soft glow, the distance between us felt smaller, bridged by the subtle closeness of skin against skin and the unspoken bond we had woven through touch and presence. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting mine with a softness that made my heart swell. There was no need for words. Everything we felt was there, in the gentle squeeze of her hand, the quiet glance, the way her toes curled against me as if reaching out for comfort and connection. I traced the outline of her foot with my fingers, marveling at the smoothness, the warmth, the quiet beauty that had become a tether for my soul. The morning light illuminated not just her skin, but the new chapter unfolding between us, a story of trust, discovery, and a love that defied easy definition. As the world outside slowly woke, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. Whatever lay ahead, I knew that this moment, bathed in dawn's soft light, was a beginning, a gentle awakening to something deep, real, and undeniably ours. The quiet morning stretched around us like a fragile promise, the soft light casting long shadows that flickered gently across the room. Her bare feet rested lightly on my lap, the subtle warmth a tether to the reality of the moment, a moment suspended between past hesitation and the unfolding future. I found myself mesmerized by the curve of her arches, the way her toes flexed with a slow, deliberate rhythm that seemed to echo the steady beat of my heart. Each gentle movement sent ripples through me, awakening a yearning I hadn't dared acknowledge before. The silence between us grew thick, charged with unspoken desires and a profound intimacy that words could never capture. My voice trembled as I finally whispered what I felt, a quiet confession carried on a breath. I want more. I need more. She looked at me then, eyes shining with a tender light that melted away every doubt and fear. Her foot moved closer, resting fully against my skin, and I felt the warmth spread through me like wildfire, comforting, electrifying, and utterly consuming. In that vulnerable moment, the boundaries dissolved completely. I wasn't just her footrest anymore. I was a partner in this delicate dance of trust and longing, a willing participant in the slow,